They're hunting her across the stars, and she says I'm the only human she can trust. The star-born fugitive, Darius Vega, wiped grease from his hands as the lights in his workshop flickered. Again. He'd need to fix the generator before the next dust storm hit. Living alone on the edge of Halcyon Colony had its advantages. Peace, quiet, independence, but reliable power wasn't one of them. The clock on his workbench read 23:47. He should sleep, but sleep rarely came easily these days. 3 years on this dusty planet, and still the silence of night felt oppressive rather than peaceful. A flash of light through the window caught his attention. Something streaked across the night sky. Not a meteor, its trajectory too controlled. The object disappeared behind the eastern ridge, followed by the distant boom of impact. Darius hesitated. The sensible choice was to ignore it. Colonial Defense would investigate if it was important. "Since when did you start making sensible choices?" he muttered to himself, grabbing his jacket and flashlight. The eastern ridge was a 30-minute trek through scrubland. As he approached the impact site, he noticed something odd. No smoke, no fire, just a long furrow in the earth leading to a small craft unlike any colonial vessel he'd seen. The craft's hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen despite the damage. No markings, no identifiable propulsion system. Darius approached cautiously, his flashlight beam illuminating a shattered viewport. "Hello?" he called. "Anyone alive in there?" A sound behind him. Soft, barely perceptible. He turned. She stood like a specter in the night, illuminated by starlight. Tall, with close-cropped platinum hair and skin that seemed to shimmer with a faint bluish hue. Her eyes reflected his flashlight beam like a nocturnal animal's. Blood. Deep, violet rather than red, stained her fitted jumpsuit at the shoulder and abdomen. "Please," she whispered, her voice melodic but strained. "They're tracking me." Before Darius could respond, she collapsed. He rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Despite her height, she was surprisingly light in his arms. Her skin felt cool to the touch, and beneath his fingers he could feel a pulse unlike any human heartbeat. Too rhythmic, too precise. He glanced back at the wreckage, then at the unconscious woman. Whatever she was running from, whatever she was, he couldn't leave her here. "Just my luck," he sighed, lifting her carefully. "The first visitor I get in months, and she's bringing trouble." Leona awoke to the smell of coffee and machine oil. She tensed immediately, assessing her surroundings with trained precision. Small dwelling, single occupant, multiple exits, primitive. Technology. The wound in her side had already begun to heal, her body's engineered regeneration systems working efficiently. She touched her shoulder. That injury, too, was closing. "You're awake." The human stood in the doorway, holding two steaming, Husmel approximately 30 standard years, no visible weapons, but his hands were calloused. A worker, not a soldier. "My name is Darius," he said, setting one mug on the table beside her. "Found you near your crash site last night. You said they're tracking me before you passed out." Leona sat up slowly. "I should leave. My presence endangers you." "You're injured." "I heal quickly." "I noticed." Darius nodded toward her side. "That wound was bleeding badly last night. Now it's barely visible. You're not human." "Not entirely, no." She studied him. "Most humans would be frightened. Most humans haven't spent 3 years alone on a frontier colony." He took a sip from his mug. "I'm more curious than scared." Leona hesitated, then reached for the offered drink, analyzing its contents automatically. Caffeine, water, no toxins. "My name is Leona. I was created, bioengineered by the Tavalian Consortium." "Created for what purpose?" "Protection, combat, service." She met his gaze directly. "I was engineered to be bonded to a high-ranking official, to guard them, to sense threats before they materialized, to die for them if necessary. But now you're running." "Yes." "Why?" Leona set down the mug. "My bondmate ordered the assassination of innocent envoys to provoke a war. I refused. Such disobedience should have triggered my termination protocol, but Something in my design is flawed, or perhaps not flawed at all. Darius processed this information with surprising calm, and now they want to destroy the evidence. Precisely. He nodded toward the window. How much time do we have? We? Leona tilted her head. This isn't your fight. You're in my home. That makes it my fight. He stood, moving to a cluttered workbench. Besides, I've been waiting 3 years for something interesting to happen on this rock. They will send hunters, specialized retrieval units. They will not distinguish between us. Darius shrugged, pulling open a drawer full of tools and electronic components. Then we should prepare. Leona studied him with growing curiosity. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Fear, rejection, or exploitation? Sorry to disappoint. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. How long until they track your signature? Leona closed her eyes, focusing on her internal systems. My crash disrupted my beacon, but they'll have other methods. 24 hours, perhaps less. Darius nodded, already sorting through components. Then we have work to do. By afternoon, Leona's wounds had completely healed. She stood by the window, watching the horizon with inhuman stillness. Darius worked behind her, modifying what appeared to be standard farming equipment into improvised security devices. Your technology is primitive, Leona observed, but resourceful. Frontier life, Darius replied without looking up. You learn to work with what you have. She turned to him. Why are you helping me? You know nothing about me. Darius paused, setting down his tools. 3 years ago, I came here to disappear. Lost my family in the Ganymede conflict. Thought isolation was the answer. He shrugged. Turns out loneliness isn't much better than grief. And helping a fugitive bioengineered warrior improves the situation? It's more interesting than fixing generators. His expression grew serious. Besides, you stood against something you knew was wrong, even though you were literally made to obey. That counts for something in my book. Leona felt an unfamiliar sensation, a warmth spreading through her chest. Her species didn't form emotional attachments easily. They were designed not to. Yet something about this human's straightforward compassion resonated within her. There's something else you should know, she said carefully. My kind can form bonds with those who aid us. It's part of our design, a protective mechanism. When someone helps preserve our life, a psychobiological connection begins to form. Darius raised an eyebrow. You're saying we're becoming connected? At a basic level, yes. It makes me more attuned to your safety, your vital signs. It enhances my protective instincts toward you. Is that why your skin has that faint glow when you're near me? Leona looked down at her hands, noticing the subtle luminescence beneath her skin. Yes. The connection is already forming. Before Darius could respond, a sharp beeping came from one of his modified sensors. Leona tensed immediately. They're here, she whispered. Darius moved to the workbench, grabbing a makeshift weapon. How many? 3 hunters. First wave. Leona's eyes narrowed as she focused on distant signals only she could detect. They're approaching from the North Ridge. What are their capabilities? Enhanced strength, tactical implants, neural weaponry. They're designed to retrieve or terminate. She turned to him, her expression grave. You should hide. I can lead them away. Darius checked the charge on his modified plasma cutter. Not how this works, Leona. My house, my rules. This isn't a game, Darius. Never said it was. He moved to the window, peering out at the darkening landscape. But I've been hiding for 3 years. Maybe it's time to stand for something again. Leona felt the bond between them pulse stronger, resonating with his determination. She moved beside him, her body already preparing for combat. They won't expect resistance, she said quietly. They'll assume I'm alone, weakened. Good. Darius handed her one of his devices, a crude but effective shock emitter. Let's use that advantage. As the sun set over the colony's edge, Darius and Leona stood side by side, an unlikely pair united against approaching shadows. For the first time since her creation, Leona felt something beyond her programming. A connection formed not through laboratory design, but through choice. The distant whine of hunter vehicles broke the silence. "Ready?" Darius asked. Leona nodded, her skin beginning to glow brighter with the proximity of threat and the strength of their new bond. "Ready." The cosmic bond dawn broke hesitantly over Darius's homestead, illuminating the aftermath of the night's confrontation. 3 disabled hunter units lay scattered across the property, one partially embedded in the eastern wall of the workshop, another sprawled near the generator shed, the third a smoking heap of advanced technology beside the main house. Darius surveyed the damage with a mechanic's eye, cataloging broken components and structural weaknesses. His right arm sported a makeshift bandage where a hunter's neural whip had grazed him. The pain was manageable, but the realization of what he'd just survived was still sinking in. These weren't standard military units, he observed, kneeling beside the least damaged hunter. Its humanoid frame was deceptively simple, but beneath the exterior plating lay biosynthetic muscle tissue and neural processors far beyond colonial technology. Leona approached silently, her movements fluid despite the night's exertions. "No, these are Tavalian harvesters, specialized retrieval units. They're designed to subdue and capture targets with minimal damage." She gestured to the intricate mechanism exposed in the hunter's severed arm. "This would have injected a neural suppressant had it made contact. Seems they wanted you alive." "Initially, yes." Leona's expression darkened. "They prefer to study failures rather than simply destroy them." Darius stood, wincing slightly as he tested his injured arm. "Well, they failed. Thanks to your combat skills and my ingenious traps." The ghost of a smile crossed Leona's face. "Your ingenious trap was a repurposed fertilizer spreader, which worked perfectly." He grinned. Sometimes primitive technology has its advantages. The moment of levity faded quickly as Leona's attention shifted to the horizon. Her posture tensed, her engineered senses detecting something beyond human perception. "What is it?" Darius asked. "They're already analyzing the failure." Her voice was cold, clinical. "These units were connected to a central command. Their destruction has been registered." Meaning? "Meaning, next time, they won't send hunters. They'll send destroyers." Inside the house, Darius activated his secure comms terminal, a relic from his days before self-imposed exile. The system was outdated but untraceable, connecting to colonial networks through a series of abandoned relay points. Leona watched with interest as his fingers moved across the interface. "What are you doing?" "Calling in a favor from an old friend, who owes me." He entered a complex sequence, then waited. "If more hunters are coming, we need better defenses. No amount of colonial technology will stand against what they'll send next. Good thing we won't be relying on colonial technology then." The terminal chimed, indicating a successful connection. "Renata's been smuggling experimental tech from the inner systems for years. If anyone can get us what we need, it's her." While Darius arranged the delivery, Leona moved to the center of the room, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Her eyes closed as she initiated a self-diagnostic procedure, analyzing the changes in her biosynthetic systems since forming the connection with Darius. The bond was growing stronger than anticipated. Already she could sense his vital signs. At a distance, could feel the rhythm of his breathing synchronizing with hers. This was beyond the parameters of her design. Guardians were meant to form protective bonds, yes, but not this level of integration. When Darius returned, he found her still in meditation, a soft luminescence pulsing beneath her skin in time. With her heartbeat, "Leona?" Her eyes opened, pupils contracting instantly to adjust to the light. "The bond is accelerating." He sat across from her, concern evident in his expression. "Is that bad?" "It's unexpected. In my species, bonds form slowly, over months of proximity." She studied him with clinical precision. "But something about you, about your neurochemistry perhaps, is catalyzing the process." "And what does that mean for us?" "For me, it means heightened protective instincts, enhanced awareness of your physical state, Increased combat efficiency when you're threatened. She hesitated. For you, the effects are less documented. Humans rarely bond with my kind. Darius considered this. I can feel it, you know. Not just your presence, but it's like I can sense your emotions. Faintly, but they're there. That shouldn't be possible. Genuine surprise registered on her features. The bond is designed to be one-directional. Well, apparently nobody told my neurons that. He leaned forward. Last night during the fight, I knew exactly where you were without looking. I could feel which direction you were moving. Leona's expression shifted from surprise to contemplation. This changes our tactical approach. If the bond continues to strengthen at this rate, we might actually stand a chance against these destroyers you're so worried about. Perhaps. But her tone suggested reservation. There's something else you should know, Darius. The bond, if it continues, it becomes permanent, irreversible. Meaning our fates become intertwined. My lifespan far exceeds yours, but while you live, I would be bound to you. And if you were to die, she left the implication hanging. You'd die too? Not immediately, but eventually. Bonded guardians rarely survive long after the loss of their partner. We simply shut down. Darius processed this information in silence. Finally, he said, "That wasn't in your original design specifications, was it? To die when someone you protect dies? No, it was an unexpected development in our evolution. The scientists tried to correct it, but the connection proved too fundamental to our neural architecture. Sounds less like a flaw and more like a soul." Leona tilted her head, considering. My kind was not designed to have souls. Maybe that's not something designers get to decide. A signal from the exterior sensors interrupted their conversation. Darius moved to the monitor, scanning the readout. Renata's delivery drone, right on time. By midday, they had transformed the homestead into a fortified position. Experimental shield generators created an invisible barrier around the perimeter. Prototype sonic disruptors, designed to interfere with advanced neural networks, were positioned at strategic points. Darius had even modified his household system to emit a frequency that would mask Leona's unique biological signature. Your friend Renata has impressive connections, Leona observed as Darius calibrated the final shield generator. She runs salvage operations throughout the disputed territories, gets her hands on all sorts of interesting technology. He made a final adjustment. There, that should give us a fighting chance. Leona stood at the boundary of the shield, looking outward toward the distant mountains. They're already mobilizing. I can feel it. How many? A full extraction team, 7 units including a command officer. Darius joined her, his shoulder brushing against hers. Where they touched, her skin brightened subtly. When? Tonight. They prefer darkness for operations against enhanced targets. Then we have a few hours. He turned to face her. Which means there's time for you to tell me the real reason you defied your programming. What made you risk everything to save those envoys? Leona was silent for a long moment. It wasn't just about the envoys, she finally said. It was about what I saw in my bondmate, Commandant Vex, the way power had corrupted him, the casual cruelty with which he made decisions affecting millions. Her gaze met Darius's. I was designed to protect him, but I realized no one was protecting others from him. That's a dangerous realization for someone engineered to obey. Yes, it created a conflict in my core directives. Protection versus obedience. Her voice softened. Something in me chose protection. Free will, Darius said. You developed a conscience. Perhaps. Or perhaps my programming was more complex than my creators intended. She looked down at her hands, watching the subtle play of light beneath her skin. Whatever the cause, I cannot return to what I was. Good. Darius's voice was firm. Because what you are now is something worth fighting for. The bond between them pulsed stronger at his words, a tangible current of connection. Leona felt something unfamiliar expanding within her chest. an emotion beyond the parameters of her design. "We should prepare," she said, turning back toward the house. Darius caught her arm gently. "Before we do, you said the bond is becoming permanent. What does that mean for us beyond the tactical advantages?" "In the traditions of my kind, it is known as the Stellar Covenant. Two beings joined not by command or design, but by choice and necessity." She met his gaze directly. "The humans who first encountered my species called it something simpler." "What?" "Love." Night fell like a shroud over the landscape. Darius and Leona stood on the roof of the house, watching thermal signatures approach through the darkness, 7 distinct heat patterns moving with mechanical precision toward the shielded perimeter. "Remember the plan," Darius said quietly. "We let them think the shields are our only defense. Draw them into the choke points." Leona nodded. Her body had entered combat readiness. Skin luminescence dimmed to near invisibility, reflexes heightened, sensory perception expanded. Through the strengthened bond, Darius could feel the cool determination flowing from her mind. The first destroyer reached the outer shield. Unlike the hunters from the previous night, these units made no attempt at stealth. A focused energy beam pierced the barrier, creating an entry point large enough for the unit to step through. "They're more powerful than I anticipated," Leona whispered. "Good thing we didn't pin all our hopes on the shields then." The destroyers moved in formation toward the house, 6 standard units flanking a central figure. This leader was different, taller, more humanoid in appearance, with an officer's insignia visible on its shoulder plating. "Commander Kress." Leona's voice was tight with recognition. "Vex's personal enforcer." "You know him?" "We were created in the same facility. He chose loyalty over conscience." The commander halted his units 30 meters from the house. His voice carried clearly through the night air, amplified by internal systems. "Guardian Leona, by authority of the Tavalian Consortium, you are ordered to surrender for decommissioning. Your human associate will be processed according to protocol for harboring fugitive property." Darius snorted. "Charming fellow." Leona stepped forward, her voice equally powerful despite its natural projection. "I am no longer property, Chris. I have chosen my own path." "Impossible. You were designed to serve. As were you. Yet you chose to become a weapon rather than a protector." The commander's posture stiffened. "Final warning, Leona. Surrender or be destroyed, along with your human." Darius activated the remote trigger in his pocket. Throughout the property, hidden emitters began broadcasting the disruptor frequency. The effect on the standard destroyer units was immediate. Their movements became erratic, coordination failing as their neural networks experienced interference. But Commander Kress remained unaffected. "Primitive tactics," he called, advancing while his units struggled to recalibrate. "Did you think we wouldn't adapt after your encounter with the hunters?" Leona touched Darius's arm. "He's shielded against the disruptors. I'll have to engage him directly." "We'll engage him," Darius corrected, activating a secondary system. The ground beneath the approaching commander erupted in a controlled explosion, destabilizing his footing momentarily. It was all the advantage Leona needed. She leaped from the roof with inhuman grace, covering the distance to Kress in seconds. Their collision was like thunder, 2 engineered beings meeting with forces that would shatter ordinary matter. Darius turned his attention to the disoriented destroyer units, using modified farming equipment to disable them one by one. His understanding of machinery, even advanced Tavalian technology, gave him an edge in identifying vulnerable components. Through the bond, he could sense Leona's battle with Kress, a brutal exchange of precisely calculated strikes. Each blow carried enough force to collapse a building, yet both combatants moved with incredible speed and control. Kress was stronger, his design optimized for combat rather than protection. But Leona fought with something beyond programming, a fierce determination born of her newfound autonomy and the bond connection giving her strength. When the commander landed a powerful blow that sent her sprawling, Darius felt the impact through their connection. Without hesitation, he abandoned his position and ran toward them, ignoring the danger. Cress saw him approaching and smiled coldly. So, the bond is fully formed. Perfect. He raised a weapon designed specifically for human neural systems. Let's test its limits, Leona screamed as she perceived his intent, throwing herself toward Darius with desperate speed. The bond between them flared blindingly bright, visible even to normal human perception, as a luminous thread connecting their bodies. In that moment of extreme danger, something unprecedented occurred. The bond synchronized their neural patterns completely, allowing Leona to extend her enhanced reflexes to Darius. Moving with borrowed speed, he dodged the neural weapon's discharge. More than that, the complete synchronization allowed him to access fragments of Leona's combat programming. His movements became precise, calculated, as he struck at exactly the right point on Cress's weapon, shorting its firing mechanism. The commander stared in disbelief. Impossible. A human cannot. His words cut off as Leona struck from behind, her hand finding the reset point at the base of his skull, a weakness known only to those created in the same facility. Cress froze, his systems cycling into emergency, shutdown. The battlefield fell silent. The disabled destroyer units twitched ineffectually on the ground. Commander Cress stood immobilized, consciousness trapped in a loop of system diagnostics. Darius approached cautiously, still feeling the lingering effects of the neural synchronization. Is he temporarily deactivated? Leona confirmed. The reset will hold for approximately 12 hours. Enough time to get off-world. She looked at him questioningly. Renata's coming with a transport, he explained. I called her while you were meditating. She'll be here by dawn. You're leaving your home? This place stopped being a home years ago. He gestured around at the battle-scarred property. It was just a hiding place. Besides, they know where to find us now. Leona processed this information. Where will we go? The outer territories. Beyond Tavalian jurisdiction. Renata knows people who can help us disappear. He took her hand, watching as her skin brightened at his touch. Unless you'd rather go your own way? She looked down at their joined hands, then back to his face. The bond is permanent now. You felt it during the battle. I did. It was incredible. He smiled slightly. Is it always going to be like that? No. That level of neural synchronization is rare, triggered by extreme circumstances. Her expression softened. But the connection, that remains. Good. He squeezed her hand gently, because I'm not ready to say goodbye to the first person who's made me feel alive in 3 years. As the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, Leona and Darius began gathering what they would need for their journey. The bond between them hummed with shared purpose and growing understanding, a connection neither had sought but both now embraced. Do you think there are others like you? Darius asked as they worked. Other guardians who chose conscience over obedience? Perhaps. If there are, they're hiding too. Maybe someday we'll find them. Leona considered this. Maybe someday we won't need to hide. In the distance, a transport vessel appeared, Renata arriving as promised to carry them to new possibilities. As they prepared to leave the battle-scarred homestead behind, Leona felt something she had never experienced in her designed existence. Hope. Not hope programmed or engineered, but hope freely chosen. Hope shared through a bond that defied her creator's intentions and transformed her purpose from servitude to partnership. The cosmos stretched before them, vast and unknown. But for the first time, neither Darius nor Leona would face it alone.